Peter Griffin didn't just become the way he is overnight. He's the product of a very long line of ancestors and relatives that all shaped him into the lovable idiot we know now. So let's see just how deep the bloodline runs and look at every ancestor of the Griffin family. And there's perhaps no better place to start than with the episode Untitled Griffin Family History, where Peter recounted tales of his ancestors to his family to distract them from their house being robbed.
But I think it's important for the last one of us left alive to know this story. The story of the Griffin family history.
We first start in the prehistoric era, where the tiniest organisms eventually evolved into the Homo sapiens we know today. The idea of possibly being a descendant of Peter's ancestors does not fill me with joy, but we play with the cards we're dealt, I suppose. But the first of his descendants we're introduced to is Peter, a caveman with big ideas.
Peter invent wheel. Peter show wheel to people in town, but no one want wheel.
Society just started, and everyone's already moved on to shapes with more sides and edges. Get with the times or be left behind, old man. Unfortunately for him, everyone here wants to stay in the Stone Age, even though Peter could take them into the whatever one comes after that.
Maybe Joe want try wheel on chair.
For last time, Joe no want.
But Peter ends up unlocking the secret to advertisement. It's an element that has been inside man for centuries and will probably continue to do so even after we've all turned to dust.
Brian, what hell?
Hot lady next to wheel. Make me want wheel.
Rinse and repeat that for a few thousand years and eventually you get TikTok. This was definitely worth crawling out of the ocean. And as humanity continued to evolve, so too did Peter's ancestors. For instance, did you know that Peter's a descendant of Moses, the biblical figure who rescued the persecuted Israelites out of Egypt?
Here we are, the Red Sea. Now all we gotta do is swim across.
I didn't bring my trunks.
I don't want to step on a shell.
Just BCE problems, I suppose. But Moses Griffin had a special connection to God who allowed him to part the Red Sea and even bestowed upon him a set of 10 commandments for his followers to abide by.
Commandment number 1, shut the hell up. Commandment number 2, there's nothing I can do about the sun.
Kinda sounds like less of a commandment and more of a note. It's too bad that the first commandment never caught on. The world might be a better place if everyone just shut up. And we jump ahead to the 5th century to see Peter's ancestor King Arthur Griffin, who was once the ruler over the kingdom of Camelot, a role bestowed upon him by pulling Excalibur from a stone.
I will make love to you right here in the clearing.
What if I could just move it an inch? Will you touch me?
I'm pretty sure Arthur was supposed to be a kid when he pulled the sword from the stone, so it looks like Arthur Griffin has some catching up to do. And it sounds like he's got some good motivation. Maybe Merlin should have led with that instead of all that "you'll be king of all" mumbo jumbo. And as we hop over to the 14th century, we find Peter's Viking ancestor, King of Denmark Griffin, a powerful ruler who surrounded himself with all the pleasures the world has to offer.
More wine, more women, more table.
The only thing about this lavish lifestyle is that it all just builds up in your heart until it eventually explodes. He didn't even need modern medicine, he just needed to not place his only doctor all the way at the other end of the table. Struck down at only 18. Yeah, that's what 18-year-olds looked like back then.
And that's why here in Denmark, we have very small tables.
And 100 years later, we find ourselves in the 15th century with Peter's next ancestor, Ponce de Leon Griffin, an explorer who set out to find the Fountain of Youth.
There it is, boys, the Fountain of Youth, just like I told you.
No, it's fine, I was just expecting it to be more fountain-y. Would it have killed whoever created this thing to add a little more pizzazz to it? But the Fountain of Youth is a tricky mistress. If you do decide to give it a dip, maybe consider going in head first.
Well, that was worth the 8-year boat ride.
And around that same time, the game of golf was invented somewhere in Scotland, and as it turns out, Peter's great-great-great-uncle Angus Griffin might have had something to do with that.
So we're all clear on the rules then. No Jews and no blacks. Aye.
Well, I guess nobody told Tiger Woods that. It's breaking the rules like that probably made him the trailblazer he is today. When he's not flipping cars, that is. But the thing about golf is that it's for everybody, regardless of what Peter's ancestor says. If you wish to be bored out of your mind for 5 hours smacking your ball into a pond, it's your right as a human being to do just that. And as we roll into the 17th century, we see the founding of Quahog, Rhode Island, which of course somehow involved Peter as his ancestor Griffin Peterson, the founder of the town.
Shouldn't you be down at your job making oblong bricks out of manure and straw?
No, we're off. It's Martin Luther Day.
So in 1600s England, Griffin Peterson intends to marry the love of his life, Lady Redbush. I know all these historical figures are portrayed by Family Guy characters for the sake of consistency, but it's not exactly making me doubt that the Griffin bloodline is just rife with inbreeding.
That piece of ass is marrying that tall glass of poop juice? Well, not if I have anything to say about it.
Unfortunately, the King of England has his sights on Lady Redbush, and in order to court her, he ends up shipping Peterson to the scary new world known as America. Nowadays, you gotta pay good money and go for a year-long process just to do that. He doesn't realize how good he's got it. Sucks about the wedding, though.
Where you going for your honeymoon?
That medium-sized hill?
Wrong! Seize him!
And after many months at sea, Peterson landed on the coast of what would be known as Rhode Island. And since he didn't immediately see anybody after being off the boat for 5 seconds, that means he gets to name it and claim it as his own. Keep that neat trick in mind next time you're traveling abroad.
I declare this land Quahog.
This place is nothing but a wilderness. What are we gonna do?
We're gonna build a new settlement.
And so they did, as Quahog began to grow and thrive with a bustling local economy and culture. In time, Peterson had started to forget Lady Redbush, taking up his time with, well, you're probably gonna want to shield your eyes for this one.
You must have had a lot of practice.
No, not really. I've been saving myself for marriage.
I know the show is pretty dry on female characters, but surely anyone could have been a better choice for this than Meg. No shade to her, but the suspension of disbelief is not keeping me from wishing they'd both get smited by some deity. But luckily, he ends up moving on as soon as Lady Redbush learns he was shipped off to the New World.
Griffin!
Lady Redbush!
Thankfully, the divorce proceedings back then just involved a musket to the chest, so these two were all good to get married. But King Stuart quickly catches wind of this and descends upon Quahog, intent on bringing his wife home.
I found him, Your Majesty. Indeed, yes, I did found him, did I? Indeed, yes, sir, I did.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Unfortunately, the Revolutionary War hadn't happened yet, so they're at the mercy of the king's whims. They'd better get to throwing tea in the harbor quickly. It's the only true way to defeat a British man. But they managed to come up with a civilized way to settle this.
Talent show?
Talent show.
Better than just cutting her down the middle and each taking their own half. They really were quite progressive back in the 17th century. Luckily for Peterson, his rendition of a scene from Revenge of the Nerds is enough to lawfully win Lady Redbush's hand. And the rest of her body, too. Like I said, the 17th century was pretty progressive.
I want to have a baby with you.
And I want to be there when you die giving birth to it.
And Peter also has a pair of unnamed ancestors from roughly around this time, who now haunt pieces of art of themselves in the Griffin house, commanding Peter to do terrible things.
I did it! I'm gonna be on TV!
Did you kill the others?
I shan't!
You must.
Growing up always revolves around wrestling with the expectations of your elders. But you just gotta remember that you have to be your own person. Only kill the others if it's something you really want to do.
Did you kill the painting?
This place is a nut house.
And as we move on into the 18th century, we learn that Peter had an ancestor named Nate Griffin who was, let's just say, not of similar complexion to Peter.
What the hell? Holy crap, I'm black!
Yeah, that's quite the realization. Does that absolve all of Peter's racist jokes from the past, or does it actually make them worse? And there's no real denying the lineage connection, as Nate and Peter sound 100% related.
Oh, that laugh's in here too, see?
So this technically makes Peter black. Just, without all the racial baggage that actually makes being black in the US difficult. But there's even more to his ancestors' history, as not only was he a slave, but he was actually owned by Lois's ancestors.
What was that?
Oh, that was nothing. Just some fellow we fed and took care of in exchange for doing a few chores.
Oh, so an intern. Not very heartening to hear that annoying practice was prevalent all the way back then, too. After making this discovery, Peter feels that he should be entitled to reparations for all the pain Carter's ancestors caused his own ancestors in the past. I mean, could you imagine where Peter could have been today if he hadn't been held back like that? I mean, probably the same place. I don't think anything can fix his brand of hereditary stupidity. But money's still cool, though.
So here's $10,000, and I expect you never to mention this ugly business again.
$10,000?
Not enough? Fine, make it 20.
Finally, a long-needed victory for a person of color. Unfortunately, Peter's color is actually green with greed, as he initially decides not to share his reparations with his community and instead spends them on absolute nonsense.
Oh my god, you turned the den into Pee-wee's Playhouse?
Even if he earned this money through his own hard work and determination, this still would have been a pretty egregious waste of funds. Have you tried living in a place where every piece of furniture won't shut up? It's hell on earth. Now being exiled from both the white and black communities, Peter ends up having an epiphany thanks to the appearance of the spirit of his ancestor.
Nate Griffin? Oh my god, you're haunting me because I've been a terrible black man.
What a way to spend the afterlife that would be. On the contrary, Nate just tells Peter that it's not the color of their skin that defines a man, it's his actions. Although you are allowed to do bad things to bad people. Let's not forget that important piece of information.
If it makes you feel any better, I peed in their cereal every morning.
And with those reassuring words, Peter makes the right decision and gives that money to people who truly need it. Those forced to watch high school sports. They truly are the most oppressed people out there.
Just goes to show you, Lois. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. The only color that really matters is green.
That being said, if your skin starts to turn green, you should probably seek medical help. I've seen too many good men turn into the Grinch, and I won't stay silent about it any longer. But we would actually get to learn more about Nate's past and his journey to freedom in Untitled Griffin family history, as we see him ripped away from his home in Africa and brought to America.
Wow, you're a different color than me. Would you like to be equals?
I can't tell what's more cursed, Black Peter or White Cleveland. So when Nate is sent to America, he ends up working on a plantation owned by Lois's ancestors, and he immediately falls in love with the daughter of the estate.
As a poet might say, she was the kind of woman you just want to have with over and over.
Shakespeare couldn't have said it any better himself. And over time, the two would form a relationship in secret, even having an entire family.
Just as I thought. Lois, how in God's name could you embarrass the family like this?
So like, does this mean that Peter and Lois are technically related? Is there enough of a time gap that the genetics aren't completely scrambled up? Actually, inbreeding would explain a lot about the Griffin family. Luckily, Nate and his family managed to make it to the north, where slavery is abolished and gives back to the human race by inventing the DMV. Yeah, thanks man.
Sir, did you fill out the 1170?
I think I did.
Did you fill out the 1170?
I filled this out.
And not long after that came Peter's great-great-great-great-grandpa, Thomas Griffin, who was well known in his time for being an influential philosopher.
Thomas, would you please go look for a job?
Why?
Finally, a man willing to ask the difficult questions. It's wild that you could just sit around and think all day and that would be your legacy. And I guess this scene could also potentially confirm Peter's great-great-great-great-grandmother and possibly his great-great-great-grandfather as that baby. But they didn't ponder the eternal questions of the universe, so I guess they really aren't worth remembering. And it's probably around this time that the Civil War began to take shape, and it turns out Peter has quite a few notable ancestors from around this period. For starters, he was related to a pair of Siamese twins who found themselves on both sides of the war.
I'm seceding, like hell you were!
It looks like this conflict between the North and South has spiraled into an issue between the East and the West. Get it? Because yeah, you get it. But while we can appreciate the one twin fighting for a noble cause, it might not have been the best move to kill the guy who's completely fused to your body.
Not too smart, huh?
Yeah, did not think that one through.
Look on the bright side. At least you have a pretty convincing Halloween costume to take advantage of every year. Unfortunately, Halloween won't really become a popular thing for another 100 years or so yeah, maybe that move could have used a second thought. And Peter's family would have an even greater role in ending the Civil War, as Peter's great-great-uncle, Ulysses S. Griffin, would soundly defeat the Confederacy on the battlefield of drinking.
Chug-a-luck, 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 chug-a-luck. Yeah! Woo!
See, why can't we just solve our differences like that? Even if you lose, the winner's still probably going to die of alcohol poisoning at some point, so you still get a tiny victory. And it's with that victory that Ulysses S. Griffin forever altered the future of not just the northern, but the southern states as well.
All right, no more slaves. But we still don't have to read books.
Deal.
Yeah! Woo!
But Peter's family didn't only do good back then, as his great-great-grandfather, John Wilkes Photo Booth Griffin, might have been involved in the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. Not saying his response was the most reasonable, but Lincoln should have known better than to hog all the film. Photographs were brand spanking new back then, and you know they had to cost a fortune. I'm talking 50, maybe even 55 cents. And look, I don't know exactly how this next guy fits into that time period, but Peter did mention he had a great-great-uncle named Jabba the Griffin. I guess when they said a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, they meant roughly around the time of the Civil War. And judging by the fact Jabba liked to keep women bound to chains, I'd have to assume he was probably part of the Confederacy. But hey, the slave he had was white, so that actually makes him pretty progressive for his time. He's still an evil sexist, but he does have the moral high ground over some people from that time. And now we enter the turn of the 20th century, and there's perhaps no better place to start than with Peter's aptly named great-grandfather, turn-of-the-century take-on-all-comers Griffin.
All right, put him up, put him up! Are you having a bully day? I'm having a bully day.
I have no idea what a bully day equates to, but if it means boxing a kangaroo, no, I can't say I'm having a bully day. Can I maybe start out boxing an animal that will do less damage to my face? Like a quokka. Just look at that smug smile. These guys have had it too good for too long.
Oh, thank God we live in this time.
And as the 20s rolled around and silent movies became all the rage, Peter's ancestor Willie Black Eye Griffin made a name for himself as a lovable movie oaf. Willie starred in a number of silent pictures, making him and his family one of the wealthiest people in Hollywood. Until the movie started adding talking, and then his career instantly took a nosedive. Even back then, viewer retention was already low, so if you couldn't talk, Hollywood wasn't for you.
Chris, it's important for you to get an education. You gotta know and finish your homework.
There's just something about the old mid-Atlantic accent that's just so charming, like an iron rake on a chalkboard. Unfortunately back then, if you were a failed actor, it meant you had no other redeemable skills, so you just had to dry your money well out until you died tragically. Don't feel too bad. This is how most men his age went out back then.
He was stabbed in a card fight. It was a simpler time. It was a better time.
Another of Peter's great-grandfathers from around that time was Juarez Griffin, a man of diminutive stature who was actually a renowned cockfighter. It's actually not what you think, whether or not your mind is deep in the gutter. Oh, so that's where his anti-chicken rhetoric comes from. I guess some grudges just seep into your descendants' lives if you let them. That's why you gotta learn to forgive. All of you, go out there and tell those chickens that have wronged you that you forgive them. Save the city a few $1 million on future damages. And we've got another great-granddad of Peter's, and Messiest Griffin, the owner of one of the first few telephones made for consumers.
Hello?
Hello, Jonathan?
No, what number are you calling?
7.
Well, this is 3.
Even when there were only 12 phones in the world, you were still likely to get calls that just wasted your time. I wonder how long it took until the first scam call was made, or the first instance of dirty talking over the phone. It really was all downhill from there after these things were invented, huh? And Peter had another great-grandfather named Huck Griffin, who would go on adventures in the Deep South with an older man whose name Huck kinda wasn't allowed to say.
What did you just call me?
I thought that was your name.
That is our word.
I guess it'll remain a mystery exactly what that word was. Who could say? Oh well, I'm sure Huck Griffin learned a lot of life lessons traveling with this grown man he wasn't related to. Therapy hadn't been invented yet back then, so we're just gonna have to use our imaginations and hope that everything worked out okay with him.
Could you pass me the N-word, Jim?
Thank you.
And Peter also had a few notable great aunts from that time period, including Queen of Burlesque Griffin, a famous erotic dancer back when that job was considered classy.
Cheesy jokes and ugly broads. Way back when.
Yeah, this is just how some people spend their weekend nights. If you said you were going to a strip club, you'd probably be looked at like a heathen, but burlesque? That's how you do tasteful nudity. Tasteful nudity you still probably couldn't tell your wife about, but still tasteful nonetheless. Hey, somebody's got to give those girls some money.
Terrible time for your to live in.
But she wasn't the only one on the entertainment scene, as Peter's other great aunt, Ella Fitzgerald Griffin, was a beloved jazz singer. Oh hey, Peter's got another black ancestor. This guy really is just one big melting pot, huh? And that's pretty cool that she got to perform with the late great Ray Charles. Wait a minute, wasn't Ray Charles blind?
I'm blind!
So that's how that happens. Well, if you're not suffering for your art, can you really say you're making art? Yes. Yes, you can. Please don't go out there and mutilate yourself for that. But Peter's other great aunt, Legs Go All the Way Up Griffin, didn't have as successful of a career. In fact, I think she was more feared than she was loved.
Do those legs go all the way up?
Why, yes, they do.
Ah! Oh my god, you're a monster!
The world just wasn't ready for a lady whose body was 80% legs. In fact, I don't think the world has become ready for it or will ever be ready for it. But there's love out there for everyone, and maybe she'll find it. She's just gotta find her a leg man who likes legs and nothing else.
My legs are shaved like a little girl.
And Peter even knows of his distant great uncle who was the brother of... Actually, just watch the clip.
Hey, what are you doing? Stuff?
Yes.
Stuff?
Yes, Peter. Stuff.
Wait, wasn't Francis Griffin a World War II veteran? No wonder he took up the cause. He probably wanted to kill the family that would get his wife knocked up in a couple decades. Luckily, this ancestor isn't the worst guy to have that unfortunate last name, as he actually managed to do a lot of good, whether it was intentional or not.
Get the hell out of here!
Oh, no! You stupid idiot! What did you do?
Well, he just sped up this whole World War II thing by a few years in just a matter of seconds. I guess that technically makes him a war hero. Hopefully he got the comfiest electric chair at Nuremberg. And then there's his other great uncle, Wears a Ski Hat All the Time Griffin, who I guess is mostly just known for wearing a ski hat all the time.
Okay, my great uncle wears a ski hat all the time, Griffin, will be followed by Nick Nolte's handkerchief.
Unfortunately, we never get to see this mythical great uncle, but I have several questions. Was he named Wears a Ski Hat All the Time Griffin at birth, or was that just a moniker he came to be known by? Why does he wear the ski hat? Why does he wear the ski hat? Tell me before I throw you out of this plane after I shoot you for some reason. And the only one of his great aunts who seems to still be around is his great aunt Helen, who the family always tries to call every Christmas.
Hello?
Hi, Aunt Helen. It's Peter, Lois, and the whole family.
Unfortunately, the old gal is a little hard of hearing. Judging by how impossible it is to have a conversation with her, I'd wager that she might not even have any ears at all.
We were just calling to... I hope you got our card.
Well, even if she isn't all there, it's still pretty nice of Peter to call her every year, though I'm not doubting he's praying for the year to come when he never has to again.
So how is
It's
the...
rather cold. The pond froze over a family of raccoons.
And now we get a little farther down the family tree with Peter's grandfather, Josiah Griffin, who actually helped create one of the most famous cartoon characters ever.
Okay, we've narrowed it down to 2 possible names. All in favor of Bugs Bunny?
I always thought the name Bugs Bunny did make a ton of sense. Yeah, sure, he is a bunny, but why is his name Bugs? Is that short for something? If not, you got 2 animals in his name. How are people supposed to know what kind of animal he really is? What was Josiah's idea for his name?
And all in favor of Ephraim the Rabbit.
Ah, well, I suppose if you had to go with either one or the other, that first one probably makes the most sense in hindsight. And Peter also had an uncle who we only know as the guy in the white hat Griffin, a man most remembered for being present at a pivotal moment in history, stylin' and profilin'.
From now on, I'm gonna be right where the action is. Like my uncle, the guy in the white hat Griffin.
And in case you aren't too familiar with that picture, that's a photo of alleged JFK assassin Lee Harvey Oswald being shot and killed by nightclub owner Jack Ruby. And then there's Peter's uncle looking all dapper and put together. Far be it from him to let a photo op slip by, and now he's immortalized in this moment with a big smile on his face. I guess it's just one of those things where he had to be there. And now we get to the man who Peter assumed was his father for years, the uber-Catholic stick-in-the-mud Francis Griffin.
Jesus loves you. But in my eyes, you're a bunch of sinners and slackers who have forced a hard-working old man to retire.
Francis was introduced pretty early on in the show's life, and honestly, we should have had some doubts about his siring of Peter from the get-go. I mean, he's got a butt chin while Peter has a ball chin. The anatomy just isn't adding up. And then, of course, that's not to mention that Francis views Peter as a failure and his family as an extension of his failure too.
You're a good woman, Lois. Perhaps you won't burn in hell after all.
That place needs to lower its acceptance rate anyway. It's too dang crowded down there. It's eternal damnation, not community college. And actually, those might be the same thing. He even extends this attitude towards his grandchildren, and they're the ones he likes the most.
Mark my words, lad. You may think you're alone in there, but God's watching. Don't do it again!
I guess the Bible doesn't say anything about urinary tract infections. Francis was always a hard worker as well, and he found himself unable to cope with retirement in his old age, even landing himself in jail for breaking into his old factory.
I want to work. I want my job back.
But Dad, you're retired.
I'd rather be dead.
I mean, hey, we could probably arrange that. Sounds like a win-win for all parties involved. Anyway, despite his stern and strict style of upbringing, Peter always tried to please his dad, which is why he sought to get him a job at his old toy factory. Good for productivity, bad for pretty much everything else.
Hey, break up the sewing circle and get back to work.
And if it isn't clear how differently the two view each other, Francis even got Peter fired from his job. It's a tough life lesson every young man needs to experience. Oh, Peter's 40? Yeah, it might just be over for him, huh?
Peter, you've never spoken to me like that before. You're fired!
They do manage to make everything right by the end, but it does take bringing in the literal actual Pope to make that happen. After all, Peter does love his dad and would do anything for him, and Francis manages to meet the lowest bare minimum requirements of loving his son.
I just don't like you.
Yeah, that's about as good as it's gonna get with him, isn't it? But as we would learn later on, Francis was not Peter's dad by blood. In fact, Peter was sired by an Irish rogue named Mickey McFinigan, the most stereotypical Irishman you've ever set your eyes on.
Top of the morning, laddies. Let me cut you an Irish rose.
So this was something Peter never really picked up on until he was much older. It's hard to blame him. After all, the hints Francis would throw at Peter were very subtle and flew under the radar.
Happy Father's Day, Dad.
I'm not your father.
As subtle as a semi-truck barreling through an emergency room, this revelation drives Peter to confront his mother, who tells him the whole story of how he came to be.
About 40 years ago, I was vacationing in Ireland, and I met a young rogue named Mickey McFinigan.
I wonder what it was about Mickey's Irish charm that eventually won her over. Was it the drinking? The farting? The slapping of the table so loud that it sounds like a machine gun? Well, either way, Peter is the product of his loins, and so he travels all the way to Ireland to meet him.
I came all the way from America to find you. I suppose it's money you're wanting. I owe you some allowance and so forth.
Hey, couldn't hurt. After all, Peter is carrying on Mickey's legacy of being a loud, sloppy drunk, but Mickey just doesn't see the resemblance between the two.
You can't be me, son. You and me are nothing alike.
In the same way that a person looks nothing like their reflection in a mirror. But there's only one language Peter can speak to his father through. A language older than Celtic, that's been around since the first ape ate a fermented fruit.
Mickey McFinigan, I challenge you to a drinking contest.
I wasn't exaggerating that much either. The two actually have a bit of an emotional breakthrough after getting absolutely smashed. Well, this episode definitely nailed that part of trying to connect with your dad. And it's this win for Peter and this loss for his liver that finally convinces Mickey that Peter is truly his son. That's all well and good, but Brian actually brings up an interesting point about Francis.
Francis may not have been your father,
But he raised you as if you were his own. And if that isn't love, I don't know what is.
Yeah, but I think at this point, Peter would rather have a dad who liked him rather than loved him. Peter doesn't need a warm, tender hug. He just needs a dad he can share a beer with.
You knocked up my mom and never called her again. Yeah, so what? So what? So let's dance!
And he was never seen again. Does feel kind of weird that Peter went through all this trouble for a man he probably never shared a word with after this, but at least he's found the closure he was looking for. Maybe he mentioned how he accidentally killed Francis and that scared Mickey out of ever being around him again.
All right, this is gonna blow you guys away.
But there's one family member Peter's always been sure of, and that's his mother, Thelma Griffin, who mostly raised Peter with little help from Francis.
Wow, these are all for me?
Of course, Petey. It's Christmas. Everything's for you.
Well, now we understand how Peter developed his childishness and his weight problem. Thelma definitely seems to be the parent Peter liked the most, but as an adult, it didn't seem like he saw her all that much. The only times he did was usually to drop a nuke of shocking information on him, whether it be breaking up with Francis, telling Peter about his real dad, or informing him that he isn't technically an American citizen.
Peter, as far as the U.S. government is concerned, you're an illegal Mexican immigrant.
Yeah, he's just gotta stop seeing her. Does every single visit have to completely rattle Peter's world and turn his life upside down? Well, she ends up passing later in the show's run, which hopefully means no more truth nukes for Peter.
Okay, I will now take questions from the audience. No? None? They don't have to be about my mom.
And Peter would have a number of siblings appear in the series, but it's kind of unclear which father they might have come from. We're gonna go ahead and assume that any sibling that was confirmed to have been involved in Peter's childhood came from Thelma and Francis. So let's start there with Peter's broster.
Hey, Peter, you want to see my paginas?
I don't know.
Wonder what ever happened to Peter's broster. I couldn't imagine they'd last long in a house ruled by an iron-fisted Catholic like Francis. But hey, if someone like them can become Pope like in that one movie, then that means the sky's the limit. Oh, and I guess spoilers for that 2-year-old movie. But the other sibling who was involved in Peter's life was his sister, Karen Griffin, a bully who abused him for years to the point where he kept her existence a secret from his kids.
Wow, Peter, in all the years I've known you, you've never even mentioned a sister.
Big deal, I don't talk about my sister.
Yeah, no point in starting a family do you have to be honest with them. If you did that, you'd have nothing to shockingly confess to on your deathbed. That's what we're all aiming for being honest. But Karen decides to invite herself over for Thanksgiving, and she actually makes a pretty good impression on everyone when she arrives.
And Karen?
And you must be Meg.
Do that to me!
What an absolute unit. I guess Thelma kept a little bit of Mickey's DNA when she made her. That's how DNA works, right? But it also becomes glaringly obvious why Peter wasn't keen on having her around more.
Hey, Karen. Welcome to our...
Bring it in, PP!
You know, I've never found that funny when Peter did it, but seeing it happen to him now makes it funny. Despite wanting nothing to do with her, it's clear Karen left a pretty big impression on Peter's life.
What are you, ashamed of me, chin nuts?
Oh my god, his chin kinda does look like nuts.
Ashamed probably isn't the right word. Terrified, traumatized, mortified, those are probably the more apt words. And wouldn't you be if your sister were a professional wrestler known for choking her opponents out?
We will never forget what happened yesterday, but you'll also never forget what's gonna happen September 17th.
And everyone quickly learned she's never held back on Peter. Even the act of putting him in a chokehold has him peeing his pants and redeveloping a stutter he hadn't had since childhood. If I were him, I'd probably have just died in the chokehold to avoid having to live with the embarrassment.
You're a jerk, Karen!
All these years of abuse seemed to bottle up inside Peter, who would then find an outlet for this trauma by inflicting the same kind of abuse on Meg. At least Peter never choked her out with his crotch. Not saying he's better than Karen, though. He did shoot Meg that one time. And Meg suggests the only way he can break the cycle is to finally confront Karen.
I am gonna become a lady wrestler and defeat Heavy Flo in the ring.
Wait, what? No!
It's too late, Meg. You already suggested it. And now Peter will do everything you just said verbatim. I guess you should have taken your father's advice and shut up, Meg. So Peter follows through on his mission and decides to confront Karen on her own turf.
Who the hell are you?
I'm Maxie Patty, which is short for Maxine Patricia.
Ah, the magical world of wrestling, where you can be anyone you want and dress in flashy tights while absolutely disintegrating someone's spine with a pile driver. Unfortunately, Peter doesn't really manage to teach her a lesson or get any sympathy from her, so he needs to rely on a foreign object. And a chair.
Say hello to Teen Laquifa!
And that's pretty much the last we ever hear or see of Karen, with her ultimate fate left up in the air. Maybe the way to finally get through to her is for Peter to be the bigger man and make a bold decision to help his sister.
No, I think I'm a different blood type. No, I don't want to check. Doctor says there's nothing they can do.
Yeah, I'd probably have done the same thing. And Peter also has some siblings that are legitimately carbon copies of him, which almost makes us wonder if Mickey has sired even more children like Thaddeus, Peter's evil twin.
Yeah, this will surely affect my inheritance. Yeah.
I wonder what made Thaddeus turn out evil. Was it because he was ultimately rejected by his parents and didn't have a normal childhood? Was it because he was born with that twirly mustache and had no choice but to accept a life of villainy? Hard to say, but at least he's doing well for himself. I don't see Peter with his own hot air balloon.
Yeah.
And Peter apparently has another twin, although this one is hairless, has been relegated to the shed out back, and is only permitted to eat garbage.
Close the door, the moonlight burns. It's almost Christmas. It's almost Christmas.
Peter's out here doing what people have been wanting to do with bald people for centuries. Just because he's got a little bit of alopecia doesn't mean he should be kept from the rest of the world, though. After all, someone's got to eat all the garbage.
Can I meet the family? You've overstepped. No Christmas.
Just another textbook case of sibling rivalry. Unfortunately, most rivalries don't usually end with one brother killing the other. Keep that nonsense inside the womb, you knuckleheads.
Hello, family. Let's eat all the garbage we want.
And Peter also has a handful of cousins as well, though it's unknown exactly where the familial connection starts. This includes J.C. Dugard Griffin, who kinda seems like she's going through it.
Grandpa, Daddy, husband, my belly hurts again.
Yeesh, quite a pretty family picture that scene paints. If you're unfamiliar, this is an obvious reference to J.C. Dugard, a young girl who was kidnapped in 1991 before being miraculously found in 2009. So it doesn't really take a detective to make you realize why this is one of Peter's lesser talked about relatives, and probably why this scene was deleted from the broadcast version of the episode. But a cousin of Peter's who had it a bit better off was Rufus Griffin, a blaxploitation movie actor who starred in a handful of classic films.
Oh, you out of time, baby.
How can Peter have a cousin like that and still come off as a raging racist most of the time? Maybe he's just jealous he didn't get the same breakthroughs in Hollywood as Rufus did. I guess if Peter tried to do these movies and told people he was technically black, it probably wouldn't have gone over so well. And Peter's actually the cousin of another famous Griffin, this time being the real-life actor and comedian Kathy Griffin.
Okay, and then I got on Suddenly Susan, and that was like really cool. And I still stand up and people laugh and give me money.
Yet another relative where it's painfully obvious why they aren't brought around the family all that much. Sometimes you just have to give these people the old Irish goodbye, which seems to have a bit of a different definition in Peter's house.
She's
I was in
still
college,
talking.
and
I don't get it. I poured it in her drink.
There was this one RA, and his name was C-Rock. Really cool.
And another cousin of Peter's actually shares the same name as him, with the biggest difference between the two being that his cousin is actually part pig.
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
What?
I said I wouldn't do that.
Look, you can't just have a house made of straw and expect people not to come by and blow on it. I'd have to imagine this was mentioned in the Zillow listing. So now we have to wonder which of Peter's relatives got it on with a pig. Whoever it is, there's probably a good reason we never see them come around the family reunions.
I just made stool in there, and if you blow it down, the whole woods is gonna stink. Do you understand?
And now we finally make it to Peter's children. Of course, we all know the three main ones, Chris, Stewie, and the other guy. But Peter actually has a few other children that you may not think about. The first and most obvious one is Bertram, who was first met by Stewie when he tried to destroy all the coins in Peter's coin purse.
It seems you're out of ammunition.
As are you, Stuart.
You know my name.
I know many things.
So Peter's the one carrying around that football head gene. Let that be a reminder to you all to stop the copious drinking before making a kid. But Bertram was more or less doomed to remain in Peter's body for the rest of time, though his destiny became altered when he decided to make a little donation down at the bank.
There was absolutely zero chance that I spilled all the jars and had to refill them with my own
Well, I wasn't thinking that, but now I might have a reason to start doing that. And one insemination later, Bertram was officially brought into the world through a lesbian couple. So like, have they just been looking for Bertram for the past couple years? That kid's been dead, like, for a while.
Victory shall be mine!
And those aren't the only children Peter has created through this process. In fact, there are actually dozens of different kinds of Peters running around in the world out there.
I'm Katie. I'm your daughter.
Your what? Holy crap!
Geez, Peter must have been really poor back then to have produced all these kids. There are too many to properly count and identify, but we do get to meet a few, like the aforementioned Katie, a German son and a black daughter.
I've been looking around this whole house for something to nibble on. I think I just found it.
So many confusing feelings.
Wasn't actually expecting Chris to be as concerned as he is, so good for him. He's not a complete degenerate like I thought. But the most prominent one in the episode is Larry, who looks just like a teenage Peter and tries to use that to seduce Lois.
Let me help you clean it off.
Congrats, Chris, you're no longer the biggest degenerate in this family. What is it with this family and being attracted to technical relatives? Peter's DNA should have been treated like nuclear waste and stored away somewhere safe. And unfortunately, Peter has fathered a few children who sadly didn't make it. Can't blame fate for all of them, as Peter definitely had a role in some of their deaths, like Peter Griffin Jr.
I'm sorry, Lois. I thought if I shook him enough, he'd stop crying.
Well, congrats, Peter. You won on a technicality. When Lois has kids, they need to place Peter on something that's the opposite of paternal leave, where he gets sent as far away from the newborn kids as possible. And another of Peter's children who ended up lost was going to be named Dave Griffin, and based on how he followed Stewie, it's possible he could have been his twin brother.
And here he... Oh dear.
Oh no, did Dave not make it?
Yeah, I'm sure you have no idea about how that happened, Stewie. You're probably building that casket well into the 3rd trimester. Now all we're left with is the thought of what the adventures of Stewie and Dave could have looked like. And the last of Peter's late children is a boy named Miss Griffin, who, like Chris, got their name from Peter and Lois's apparent love of the holiday.
You know, Chris, you and your stillborn twin Tmiss were named after Christmas.
Geez, no wonder they stopped having kids. Doesn't sound like they were working with the highest success rate. At least Chris got lucky with his name. It's entirely possible he could have come out with the name Thanks or Giving. And that's the Peter Griffin family tree. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and hit the subscribe button so you can catch even more Family Guy videos uploaded every week.